As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. And there's a website for it. And the second one was the very first fine that authorities in Beijing have imposed or have slapped on a gaming company for allowing underage players to bypass the government enforced time limits. And the fine was $15,500. And, basically this, I think I haven't heard up until now of any other examples. This is the first, it seems, real example of them taking these fines and rules and regulations very seriously. So 2 stories about, gaming and esports in China. It seems the situation they're getting more serious, more, draconian. Again, we can skip this, guys. Anyone have thoughts on this? Do we want to talk? Anyone have different thoughts or some thoughts?
I think we basically covered it last time. I mean, I am a little surprised that they're already cracking down, but I guess you kind of have to start by setting an example. So it means they're serious.
I mean, can I just, Jimmy, would you allow me to say the one sort of theory you had on this? Because I'm sort of curious to get the whole panel here's thoughts on it. Would that give too much away?
No, I mean, I typically refrain just because I like people to listen to the podcast, but I go for it. Go for it.
So Jimmy had this theory that I thought was very, very clever, which was, and sorry to put it on you, maybe I extrapolated from your thoughts and took it one step too far.
So you're giving the credit of me being clever and redirecting it.
No, I wouldn't have even thought of it or mentioned it or anything if I didn't. I think kidding. Your line of thinking was really good, which is, what if this is all a ruse by the Chinese government to just tax gaming companies so that they basically know every gaming company is going to work around these rules, right? Allow people to play more hours or past curfews, but they know fines are coming and it's basically just a tax under another name.
So
the only reason why
an anecdote. Oh, one anecdote.
Well, yeah,
just
in
practice. In practice, so I had worked on a project with a headphone company, and the game, the pro sports game that these players played in was sponsored by a very well-known headphone company. We would sponsor individual players with our headphones, knowing that they would get fined in press in press interviews and things, and we would just pay the fine because we were like, "Are you kidding? We have this limited edition pink headphone for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. He's going to get a fine for wearing this on his press conference, but the exposure we'll get, everything when we'll talk about it, pay the fine. This is great marketing for us." So flip that on the reverse side, because now it's coming down from the government, but the companies maybe, again, we don't know the details yet, but it was just they're getting paid $15,000 or fined $15,000 here for allowing gaming after hours. And if you're an indie, yeah, you get shut down real quick. But if you're a major company, well, maybe you make twice that in the time that you stay open. So how much of this, one, is a business decision for the companies that are going to risk the fine, and 2, how much of this was the Chinese government really just kind of wanting to put their, take more out of what's going on here? It's just a theory, but I'm interested in what you guys think about it.
There's 2 separate questions there. One is, are the penalties not effective to deter behavior? That's a separate discussion. That could be the case. It could not be. I don't know. I mean, it strikes me that a $15,000 fine isn't enormous as a starting point, particularly if you're a large games company. But the bigger question, I think, is, is this just a tax? I think the answer is, if they wanted to pass a tax, they just pass a tax. I think this is an incidence where if the goal is to extract revenue from gaming companies, this feels like an awfully weird way to go around it when like you have essentially a controlled economy. Like, I don't know.
Well, I could get more tinfoil hat, right? Again, I could stretch Jimmy's thinking here even further and say, what if this is really Tencent led, right? And Tencent wants to wipe out every indie developer, right? So Tencent goes to the Chinese government and says, look, we should really crack down on people gaming and you should fine them, right? Tencent knowingly can pay all the fines and all of their smaller competitors go out of business because they can't pay the fines. Like, what?
I mean, what you're talking is basically, regulatory capture, which happens, often. I would assume, though, that these things would be cumulative, right? Like, if it's just a $15,000 fine, then yeah, Tencent's going to pay that clearly and not be too worried about breaking this rule. I imagine it would be something where it would be like $15,000 each instance. So, if Tencent has 1 million players breaking this rule, they're going to be paying, billions, which arguably maybe they would even pay. But I don't think, if you look at it on a player basis, they're obviously not making $15,000 per player. So they're not going to pay that if it's that way.
I think your theory is more interesting, Paul, just because like it is true that discovery, I think, is hurt most by this, right? If you only have 3 hours to play a game, you're not going to risk it on a game you haven't played before. And more to the point, or, you're not going to spend it in the tutorials. You're going to probably go to your old reliable titles. So I do think that while it restricts gameplay as a whole, I think established games benefit disproportionately. I'm not saying it's a net positive, but I think they benefit disproportionately.
No question. Let me just read some of the comments here, guys, because there's some really good ones. Matthew says, will this create a black market, underground, prohibition-style gaming speakeasy? That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. There's going to be all sorts of speakeasies for 13-year-old children to play video games.
Well, I don't think it's such a crazy idea, right? Like, if you think those children have money to spend, I could see people trying to open up like underground kind of like.
You just go to the Tim Hortons activations in China, right? And it's going to be an after hours spot.
I think what's going to happen here, honestly, is that kids' parents are going to just buy games on their own account and then the kids will play them, right? I think we've talked about this, but I think there was some way that they were going to try to crack down on that, but isn't that like probably logically what's going to happen here?
So Tencent supposedly did do facial recognition technology, right, to try and deter minors. But it's also like, how hard is it to sit the parent in front,
right,
do the thing, and then like...
Well, it could be a random scan, it could be random.
True.
And I thought there was also audio ones through the mic where, depending on the voice, I suppose. I don't know.
There's a lot to be worked out and a lot of possible workarounds, though. For right now, then a little $15,000 fine to get started doesn't exactly seem like a huge deterrent.
I can guarantee, though, there will be illegal gaming parlors, right? Like whatever you want to call them, speakeasies or, there will be places, I think, for people to play games illegally, or at least, not work around the restrictions. Burley says, well, that's a very interesting take. Burley, I'm glad you think so. Tencent is what I thought of after hearing that point of view. Yeah, I think Tencent may be behind much of this. I wouldn't be surprised. Tinfoil hat.
I don't think
so. Matthew says, and would lead to great PR for the gaming industry too. Renegade video gamers battling each other underground like Fight Club.
We've really gone off the rails. Last episode, our take was, this is like the end of gaming in China. This is a disaster. No one should invest in Chinese game companies. And now it's, wait a second, maybe Tencent, the biggest Chinese game company, created this whole thing, so it was better for Tencent. Like, come on, guys, what are we doing here?
Is that the X-Files theme? Could I hum that? Did that work?
Taylor says, just let them play video games, man. I think that is the feeling. We're going to move on here. This may create the next Justin TV in Asia. I mean, who knows? You may get some creative things out of this because of the artificial situation, right? People, new tech, new whatever. Goyo says, this is some dystopian level stuff with facial recognition. It is very dystopian. /communist. Wade says Fight Club. Yeah. And so that's all we will say about Chinese underground gaming fight club.